When a simple-looking couple walks into a luxury jewelry store, they're treated like trash, laughed at, insulted. But just seconds later, their true identity shocks everyone and teaches the world a lesson they'll never forget. Stay tuned, because this story will leave you speechless. The luxurious jewelry store sparkled under golden lights, each piece displayed like a treasure from a dream. Wealthy customers, draped in designer clothes and glittering accessories, browsed the collections with an air of entitlement. Salespeople moved quickly, attending to every whim with polished smiles and rehearsed elegance. Into this gleaming world stepped Daniel and Emma, a modest-looking couple who seemed almost out of place. Daniel wore old jeans, slightly worn at the knees, and a faded denim jacket. Emma, his wife, wore a plain, simple dress with a small tear barely visible at the hem. Their eyes lit up in wonder as they admired the dazzling display cases. At the reception desk, a young woman noticed them immediately. She exchanged a knowing glance with another staff member, a silent conversation of judgment passing between them. Whispers followed the couple as they walked further inside. Mr. Carter, a senior salesman with perfectly styled hair and an expensive watch, noticed the couple as well. His expression tightened. He straightened his tie and approached them, his steps oozing reluctance. Daniel and Emma paused in front of a display featuring an exquisite diamond necklace. It shimmered under the lights, its brilliance captivating Emma. She shyly pointed towards it, her voice soft and full of awe as she asked if she could take a closer look. Mr. Carter barely hid his disdain. He let out a small, condescending laugh before speaking in a tone dripping with superiority. "That particular piece," he said slowly, as if explaining to a child, "is one of our finest. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the more affordable stores down the street." His words hung in the air, sharp and cutting. Daniel's hand tightened protectively around Emma's. Other customers turned their heads, some smirking, others shaking their heads as if agreeing with Mr. Carter's assumption. Emma's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She lowered her hand, stepping back instinctively. Daniel, ever composed, met Mr. Carter's gaze steadily, offering a polite smile that masked his hurt. "We would just like to look," Daniel said quietly. But Mr. Carter only shrugged, his fake politeness slipping further away. He gestured vaguely toward the exit. "We prefer to reserve our service for serious buyers. If you're simply browsing, I suggest you do it elsewhere." His words, though coded in formal language, left no doubt about their meaning. Emma's eyes filled with quiet sadness. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her back, guiding her gently toward the door. The whispers grew louder behind them. No one bothered to hide their amusement anymore. In a place built to serve, the simple couple found only judgment. But fate and fortune were not done with them yet. Mr. Carter crossed his arms and let out an exaggerated sigh, loud enough for others nearby to hear. His lips curled into a sneer as he looked Daniel and Emma up and down with obvious disdain. "We really don't have anything in your price range," he said loudly, making no effort to hide his rudeness. A few customers glanced over, curious about the commotion. Some chuckled under their breath, whispering behind manicured hands, their laughter slicing through the air like knives. Daniel stiffened, his jaw tightening, but he remained composed. He placed a steadying hand on Emma's back, feeling her tremble slightly under his touch. Emma's face burned with humiliation, her eyes cast down to the floor, wishing they could disappear. Mr. Carter, sensing the attention of the other customers, seemed to grow bolder. He stepped closer, towering over the simple couple with a look of triumph in his eyes. "This establishment caters to a certain clientele," he said, dragging out the words to ensure everyone within earshot understood exactly what he meant. The sales staff behind him smirked, pretending to busy themselves with displays while secretly reveling in the scene unfolding before them. Daniel opened his mouth to speak, to defend his wife's dignity, but before he could get a word out, Mr. Carter lifted a hand to silence him. He turned toward the security desk near the entrance and waved sharply. "Could you please escort these browsers out?" he called out loudly, emphasizing the word with clear contempt. "We have a certain atmosphere to maintain here." The security guard, a tall man in a dark suit, hesitated. His eyes softened with sympathy as he approached Daniel and Emma. He clearly didn't agree with Mr. Carter's behavior, but duty pulled him forward. Lowering his voice, he spoke gently to them, his words almost apologetic. "I'm sorry, sir, ma'am. I have to ask you to leave." Daniel nodded silently, his heart pounding, the humiliation sinking deep into his bones. Emma blinked rapidly, fighting back tears, as she clutched Daniel's arm tightly. All eyes were on them now. The rich customers, the disapproving staff, even the receptionist who smirked triumphantly from behind her counter. They were being herded out like unwanted pests, judged solely by the clothes on their backs and the assumptions in others' minds. Daniel and Emma walked toward the door, their heads held high despite the sting of shame weighing them down. As they stepped outside into the cool air, the heavy door closing behind them with a final, mocking click, no one inside could have imagined that within minutes, their world would turn upside down. What was about to happen would leave everyone speechless. Daniel stepped onto the sidewalk with Emma by his side, the cold sting of humiliation lingering around them. Yet instead of anger or sadness, a small, knowing smile tugged at the corners of his lips. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and made a quick call. His voice was calm and casual, as if the ordeal they had just faced inside the store meant nothing at all. Emma watched him, confused but trusting, as she wiped the corner of her eye. Moments later, the sound of engines rumbling in the distance grew louder. Heads turned as a convoy of gleaming luxury cars rolled up to the front of the store. Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, and sleek black SUVs lined the street, each vehicle more extravagant than the last. From the first car, sharply dressed bodyguards stepped out, their movements quick and professional. Following them were a group of personal assistants, carrying tablets and speaking into earpieces, scanning the area with precision. Shoppers paused, their curiosity quickly turning into stunned disbelief. Daniel slipped his phone back into his pocket and offered his arm to Emma with a smile. She hesitated, then took it, her heart pounding as realization slowly dawned. The lead assistant, a tall man in a dark suit, approached Daniel with a respectful nod. "Everything is ready, sir," he said loudly enough for the stunned onlookers to hear. "The jewelry selection for the charity gala has been prepared as you requested. We have authorization to spend up to $3 million today." Gasps echoed around them. Inside the store, Mr. Carter and the other employees froze as they watched the scene unfold through the glass doors. Their faces drained of color. In an instant, their smug expressions were replaced by horror. Mr. Carter, desperate to salvage the moment, pushed the door open and rushed outside, the manager close behind him. Their fake smiles were now stretched wide with panic. "Sir, ma'am, please accept our deepest apologies," Mr. Carter stammered. "There must have been a misunderstanding. Of course, you are welcome, more than welcome, to shop with us." He gestured wildly toward the entrance, bowing slightly in an embarrassing display of desperation. Daniel simply raised an eyebrow, his smile never faltering. Emma looked at Mr. Carter, then back at her husband, her heart swelling with pride. For a brief moment, the busy street fell silent, as everyone waited to see how the simple couple, now revealed to be far more powerful than anyone had imagined, would respond. Daniel looked at the group of trembling employees in front of him, his expression calm but unshakably firm. Mr. Carter stood wringing his hands, the manager behind him nodding eagerly, their faces flushed with desperation. Shoppers and passers-by watched in frozen silence, sensing the weight of the moment. Daniel took a small step forward, his voice steady and clear, cutting through the tense air. "Respect," he said, his eyes locking with Mr. Carter's, "should never depend on appearances." The words, though spoken quietly, struck harder than any shout could have. Mr. Carter swallowed hard, his mouth opening and closing as he searched for a response that wouldn't come. Emma, who had stayed silent until now, lifted her chin proudly. She looked at the store, the glimmering windows, the glittering jewelry, the place that had so easily dismissed them based only on how they looked. A gentle but confident smile spread across her face. "We'll take our business," she said softly but firmly, "where kindness is free." Her words hung in the air, simple and undeniable. Daniel nodded in agreement, then turned without another glance at the pleading faces before him. The personal assistants opened the door to one of the Rolls-Royces, and Daniel helped Emma inside, with a grace that made it clear who truly carried dignity. The convoy slowly pulled away from the store, leaving behind a stunned silence, broken only by the faint murmur of bystanders. Mr. Carter stood frozen on the sidewalk, his shoulders slumping as the realization of what he had just lost sank in. Not just the biggest sale of his career, but the chance to associate with a name that carried real power and respect. As Daniel and Emma disappeared into the distance, the whispers started. Bystanders pulled out their phones. Word of the incident traveled fast, and within hours, social media was flooded with videos and posts. Stories were shared, hashtags created, and public outrage erupted. Comments poured in, condemning the store's shallow treatment of customers. Memes mocked the staff's foolishness, and news outlets picked up the story, calling it a lesson in humility the world desperately needed to hear. Days later, the jewelry store that once prided itself on exclusivity found itself drowning in bad publicity. Customers canceled their appointments, reviews plummeted, influencers and celebrities publicly severed ties. The store's once untouchable reputation crumbled, all because it failed to see the true value in simple kindness and respect. Meanwhile, Daniel and Emma continued their lives, untouched and unbothered, their story inspiring countless others. They hadn't needed to raise their voices or seek revenge. Their quiet dignity had done what shouting never could. They had shown the world that true worth is never worn on the outside. It shines from within.